welcome to our weird world, the production value. All right, year 5, we finally got a specific theme song for the best month of this month. I mean, I don't know if it's the best month. It's the most consistent. It's the biggest theme. It's Serial Killer September. I love AI. God, I made that song for free. And I just write a creepy sounding song. And the only lyrics are, it's Serial Killer September. And that's what it made. And I'm super happy with it. And you know what? If that's the kind of quality that AI is going to generate, yeah, we all deserve to lose our jobs. For sure. Because that's better than like probably 3/4 of all of the songwriters and music creators out there. So, I mean, we're screwed for sure. But I don't know. Hopefully, I don't think AI is going to get to like this point where like an AI generated podcast host will be remotely bearable to listen to. But everything else that requires technical skills and does not require a personality is probably screwed. Like, we're all in trouble for the most part, except me. I'll be a podcast host, as will everybody else. And so then I will be screwed because I'm not that good. All right. If I'm being honest, not that good at this. Maybe I don't know. The download numbers indicate I am not that good at this. So why do I do it? Autism. So I don't know, man. It's Serial Killer September. Like I mentioned last week, 5 weeks in this one this year, and we're going all around the world. And our first stop on our world tour is a place you probably didn't even think of when it comes to serial killers, and that is the country of Turkey, formerly known as the Ottoman Empire, and formerly known before that as the Byzantine Empire, going all the way back to the times of Jesus and beyond. Culturally, a very important area and has a lot of stuff, but kind of like after World War I kind of faded from prominence. And that's all the backstory I'm going to give you about Turkey. All right. A better podcast, a higher quality podcast would probably take a few minutes to dive into the cultural and geographical history of Turkey. Why is it called Turkey? Why isn't it called chicken or something? I don't know. But I'd imagine it's because like ethnically there is the Turk people and then it's just called Turkey. And it's just a coincidence that in English there is a giant bird that we eat called a turkey. It's probably has nothing to do with one or the other. But I'm not going to do that, all right? Because this is a podcast that's all about getting to the topic. I actually, while I appreciate context, love it. Sometimes these podcasts out there, they do a little too much. They spend too much time on the background when really what you're there for is to find out who got murdered and how it happened. All right. And that's what I'm here for. All right. I got 3 dudes from Turkey who were
Story time. Story time. Story time.
Our first story is of Yavuz. Oh boy, I can't pronounce this last name. There are like, standard looking letters in there, but then like the eyes look different. Like there's no dot on the I. I don't know what that means. The P also looks like it's in a different font. The G has like a weird thing over it, and the O looks different. The C looks different. Hang on, let me look at, yeah. And it's all, I'm looking at my notes right now. The font says Arial, all of the letters, but they don't look it. All right. Cause like I'm looking at an O in in another word here, and it looks different from this O. I'm also looking at a P, and that P looks different. Let me look at a C. C looks a little different too. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. But his name is Yavuz Yapicioglu, whatever. Yavuz. He was born in 1967, and he was one of 10 children born to a family who didn't actually care about their kids, but didn't think to maybe stop having them. His father cheated on his mother and quickly replaced her with an overbearing, cold stepmother who was probably thrilled to take over the lease on 10 kids that were not hers. Although Yavuz graduated at the top of his class in elementary and middle school, he dropped out of high school after he got into a fight with his parents and then subsequently ran away from home. But Yavuz wasn't about to let the world beat him down. All right. Typically for runaways, the chances of having a successful, happy life, not great. But Yavuz, he got married. He played soccer for an amateur league club, and he opened his own leather business. However, the marriage quickly fell apart. The business floundered, and with nowhere really to turn, he joined this like small religious cult in Istanbul and moved in with one of his brothers. So in 1994, fast forwarding now, he's 27 years old. He's walking down the street when this rude, thoughtless, 20-year-old mouth breather named Saeed Korkmaz told him good morning. What a dick. What nerve of that guy to look Yavuz in the face and say, good morning, brother. I assume that's how they sound. Like, Yavuz is miserable. It's not a good morning for Yavuz. He's divorced. He's bankrupt. And he's in this cult who probably has forced him to give them the rest of his money. And is probably, I don't know, finger in his butthole some. Because that's what cults do. It's not a good morning. And that was apparently the breaking point for Yavuz as he just promptly stabbed Saeed Korkmaz to death. And at that point, Yavuz he's broken free. All right. His life is no longer real. It is just an action movie now. He stabs 2 more people who saw the whole thing happen in the first place, and then stopped a guy named Rasim Aydin in the street, killed him, and then stole his car. And police, I don't know if police were like right there on the scene and also watched this, or they got called and they quickly responded. But now there's a police chase going on through the streets of Istanbul. Action, explosions, probably not explosions, but just action happening everywhere. He was finally caught though, and he was taken to a psychiatric hospital, but he was not having any of this. All right. He assaulted the nurses. He set the entire psychiatric ward, or the floor that he was on fire. And for some reason, and again, this is Turkey, not a ton of details coming out about their history. But he got a fantastic lawyer and was somehow released from all charges due to something called diminished responsibility, which is a defense tactic that was used quite a lot. I don't think it's used as much now because courts finally figured out what a pile of crap it was. But it's a defense tactic that argues that someone could not be held liable for their actions because their mental functions were impaired. And not by like drugs or alcohol, but by like natural degradation and mental illness and all of that. And that was a pretty popular defense tactic that worked for a lot of serial killers and mass murderers. Like, he's like, diminished responsibility. Poor fella, poor old special guy. He didn't know what he was doing. And this worked. And Yavuz, all the charges dropped and he goes free. And once he was back on the streets, he's walking around town one day and he came across a dispute between a girl and her servant. And the servant was actually in the process of chasing this girl down when Yavuz jumped in between them and stabbed the servant to death. Again, now he's on the run again. He flees to the city of Adana, where he kills 3 more people. before taking a train to the country's capital city of Ankara and killing 2 more people. At this point, he's unstoppable. He can't be caught. He's just killing people all willy-nilly in Turkey. And so he goes back and visits one of his brothers, and for some reason then sets his brother's business and 2 other relatives' homes on fire. He broke into his father's home with the intent to kill him because, screw you, Dad, for marrying this old hag of a stepmom who didn't love us. And unfortunately, his father was there, prepared with a shotgun, and fought him off. And then from there, failing to kill his own father, he went to his grandmother's house and beat her to death with an ashtray, which is wild. Yavuz was arrested again after this incident, but after a year of psychiatric treatment, dude was set free again because his lawyer got him off with diminished responsibility. And guess what happened? Within days of his release, he picked up where he left off and killed 3 people with a screwdriver. Do you understand how hard you have to stab somebody with a screwdriver and how many times you have to stab somebody with a screwdriver to kill them? That's wild. He was finally arrested on December 24th, 2002, and ordered to undergo a mental exam by the Legal Medicine Institute, who was tired of this diminished responsibility nonsense, and they finally found him fully liable for his actions. During the trial, one of Yavuz's brother told authorities that Yavuz had confessed to over 40 murders over the last several years. However, and unfortunately, that's all we know. I assume he's in prison, but once he got sentenced, and I guess not let back out, Turkey just kind of stopped caring about him. Our next story here is of Ali Kaya, whose story began in 1997 upon his release from prison for theft and assault charges. He wanted to turn his life around and be a good person, so he got a job at his uncle's real estate office in the city of Alanya. That lasted for a couple of weeks before he decided being a good person was too boring, and so he stabbed his uncle to death. The good uncle who had given him a job out of prison. He's like, nah, stabs him to death. Kaya was quickly arrested and sentenced to 5 more years in prison, which seems a little light for killing someone, but whatever. But then thanks to parole, he was back out after only 2 years. By then, Kaya had gotten word that while he was in prison that someone had raped his mother, and that simply was not okay. All right. Kaya hunted down and killed Zeynel Gumus, who he thought had committed the rape. I don't know if he actually had. People just kind of just stopped there because it's Turkey. They don't really care about details. Again, Kaya was arrested for this murder and was sent to prison. He was diagnosed with having some vague mental disorder and was transferred to a psychiatric hospital. He was released a short time later because he had claustrophobia. And that makes no sense. Just get him a bigger room. Don't give him all of the space. Just give him a bigger one, but I get whatever. Not long after his release, shockingly, Kaya stabbed 3 people, 2 of which eventually died. He was arrested again, but all the charges were dropped because he had a psychiatric report on him. And in Turkey, that somehow qualifies you to be allowed into the general public and do whatever you want to do. It's like, officers, I'm sorry. Officer, I'm sorry. I know I just killed 8 people. But here is my psychiatric report. It says he's fine. I can't help it. So you got to let me go. And then they have to just let him go, apparently. I never want to go to Turkey if this is how they are running their country. Now, I do want to clarify, he was still, booked and he was still sent to trial, but he wasn't held in jail while the trial was going on, which is typically what happens, right? He was just out in public and they just trusted that this guy was going to show up to his trial every day. And apparently he did. He got convicted. He got sent to prison. Once he was in jail, he quickly found 2 prison wardens, stabbed them, which earned him a stay at another psychiatric hospital. Well, on March 13th, 2000, Kaya was sharing a hospital room with Ayhan Kartal, who was known as the Beast of Izmir, who had raped and killed 2 boys back in the 1980s. they're talking, I guess. Kaya's like, hey man, I gotta go. I've lost my vague Middle Eastern accent that I was using a few minutes ago. Gotta go back out and find that. And so along with their other roommate, Typhoon Shaheen, Kaya stabbed Kartal to death, which, okay, fine. We'll give him credit for that one. And then following that murder, Kaya earned his nickname of the Babyface Killer because I guess at that point, the Turkish people saw him as like this Dexter character who was a serial killer, but he killed another serial killer. And so he was an okay guy. Either way, he was sent back to prison for this. Unsurprisingly, he escaped in 2003. He was then found a year later with a fake ID and a long hit list full of names of people that he believed had abused him as a child. So now we're getting somewhere. We're figuring it out. We're unraveling this knotted power cord of a brain this guy has. And so when asked by investigators what he wanted to do with that hit list, Kaya explained that he wanted to, quote, clean the society from bad people. Very admirable. All right. Totally. Like, I get it. Can you kill them all? Kind of against the rules. All right. So it's just, little issue with your plan. He was then sent back to prison for more like conspiracy to commit murders and stuff like that. Well, on January 5th, 2014, at the end of visiting hours, Kaya just walked out of the prison. Like, no one noticed. I guess the guards just kind of like stopped paying attention, left the door open. Kaya's just like, all right, guys, I had a good visit. I'll see you later. And no one noticed until there was like a cell check later that night and noticed that his was empty. He was recaptured 2 months later with another hit list that he had just, I guess, written from memory, and he was sent back to prison. I assume that he's still in there. Hasn't been any more updates since then. Our final story here is of Ozgur. I don't know how to do the dots above the letters. Ozgur Dengiz, who was born in 1984 to a military veteran and a seamstress. He apparently didn't enjoy living with a military parent and often ran away from home, probably because it's super strict. At age 17, Dengiz killed a friend after they got into an argument. Although he was found guilty, he was only given a 10-year sentence because he was a minor. Well, after 3 years, Dengiz received a pardon from President Ahmet Necdet Sezer and, at his father's insistence, joined the Turkish army. But just like when he was a kid, Dengiz made several attempts to run away, but failed each time, which finally earned him a psychiatric evaluation. When his military service finally ended, he returned to Ankara, where his mother opened up a tailor shop for him because she was a seamstress. She knew how to do that kind of stuff. And she literally just opened up a business for him so that he could make a living. Well, on June 5th, 2007, Dengiz went into an electronics store to buy a laptop. When the employee there, Sedat Ezurumlu, Turkish names, man. Thank God Australia is next week. Spoiler alert. But when the employee told Dengiz that he didn't have enough money and he couldn't afford the laptop that he was looking at, Dengiz murdered this guy and stole 2 laptops from the store. Because he showed you, I'll show you, buddy. Can't afford a laptop. I'll take 2 of them. He tried to sell one of them, but then got cheated out of the money, which is... that's appropriate. That's what he deserves, right? A few months later, on September 12th, Dengiz finally snapped. I mean, he'd already snapped, but he snapped again and shot a garbage collector. And then a few hours later, he killed 55-year-old Kafer Air by shooting him twice in the back of the head, and then took his body, tossed it into his car. Once inside his car, apparently Dengiz, he really did snap at this point because he began skinning Kafer's body, ate some of the meat, and then put the rest in a bag. He then dropped the body off at the dump where he had killed the garbage collector earlier, and then returned home to the apartment that he shared with his parents. Still, when he walked inside, he took a piece of Kafer's meat, gave it to his dogs, and then put the rest in the refrigerator. Well, a few days later, people realized that Kafer Air, he's missing, and so they're starting to look around. They quickly realized that Dengiz was the last person that he had been seen with. He connected him to the disappearance. After searching the apartment and finding Kafir's meat in the fridge, they found Dengiz somewhere else, probably at his tailor shop, and arrested him. He told police that he found human flesh irresistible and that he would have kept killing people for their meat had he not been caught. How bad is Turkish food that this dude was like, nah, people are better, right? Like, I've heard things about Turkish coffee where they like, I don't know, they put it in the giant hot sand pit and that boils it and they do stuff with, I don't know. That seems like it's pretty popular. No, I don't know anything about Turkish food. What is Turkish food? Is that halal? Is that like kebabs? I don't know. It's probably like lamb and goat on a skewer with some vegetables. I don't know. Anyway, it's not the point. It's not the point of the show. We're almost done. Dengiz was quickly given 2 life sentences for his murders, but the ruling was overturned by the Court of Cassation, who found that Dengiz was insane and not fit to be accused. Instead, he was sent to a mental hospital. And again, just like with the other 2, that's kind of where they stopped caring about him. I don't know. He's probably still there. Maybe. Hopefully. All right, there you go. Some Turkish serial killers in the books. All of the stories this month can be found in 100 Stories, Serial Killers, or part 2 of that. 200 serial killers in books for your enjoyment, or just keep listening to the podcast. Why would you buy the book if you could just listen for free? Great business model, dude. Anyway, let's recap and see what we learned today.
What did we learn?
Number 1, you could be insane and apparently be able to do whatever you want because diminished responsibility. You don't. He's he's special. He don't know what he's doing. He can't help it. Anyway, number 2, Turkey would love it if your historical records would finish a story. All right, just because someone goes to prison doesn't mean their story's over. Their story's over when they die. And if they die in prison, let us know. Or at least just tell us that he is in prison. That's it. Those are the 2 takeaways from today's episode. Look, next week and the weeks after will be better. All right. There will be more complete stories. But it's Turkey, right? I don't know if it's like a cultural thing that like Asia and the Middle East aren't super fond of finishing stories or whatever, but it seems to be a pattern. Just Western journalism, so much better and so much more complete for the most part. Anyway, we did it.
What did we learn?
Next week on Our Weird World, we are starting the first of 2 episodes on serial killers from Australia. We got 3 next week and 3 more the week after. But next week, we are looking at the stories of Eric Edgar Cook, Edwin John Eastwood, and Peter Dupas. Am I going to do the entirety of the next 2 weeks in an Australian accent? Maybe. That's going to be fun for absolutely no one except me, which means there's a good chance I'm going to do it. All right, get ready for that, because this is... Gearing to Australia, gonna talk about some serial killers. Gonna do this potentially. Just switch things up a bit. Can't wait. Crikey. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for listening. Keep telling all your friends and keep it weird.
This is a podcast.